Left, Christopher Diamaro. To my right, Joe Fortino. To my far right, Christopher Tomlinson. I am George Maurer, and the town council, Mr. McGuire, is here. At this time, I'd like to introduce the case by reading the advertisement. Wednesday, July 27th, 2016. Case number 295, to request a variance of the rear yard setback from the required 25 feet to 10 feet in order to construct a 16-foot by 22-foot deck with screened porch. The location of this request is 2805 Whitman Court. The applicant and owner is Nancy Jensen. The basis for this section is zoning ordinance 250-27. At this time, I'd like to call the zoning officer for a statement on the case.
I received a variance request from Nancy Jensen, who resides at 2805 Whitman Court. She is in an R10,000 zoning with a cluster subdivision that has changed the setbacks. The setbacks for her neighborhood are 30-foot fronts, 25-foot rears, and a 15-foot combined total side yards with a minimum of 5 feet on one side. Ms. Jensen had previously had a porch with a screened-in screen room on it that had some damage this winter, and after contacting her insurance company to rebuild the deck, it was realized that there was no permitting done at the time and no variances previously. So now she's come before you to ask for a variance to reconstruct this.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask all who will be speaking on this case to stand to be sworn in. So if you wish to speak in this case, please stand now, and Chris will swear you in. Chris?
Do you solemnly declare or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony which you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call the applicant or a representative for the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record, then present your case.
Yes, ma'am.
To this microphone.
Nancy Jensen, 2805 Whitman Court, Manchester, Maryland. The earliest I could find out, I don't know for sure when my screened-in porch and deck was built, but I have a family picture with it in May of 2006 when I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. I can't help it. I'm scared. I didn't know that the person I paid to build the deck didn't do what they were supposed to do. When I contacted my insurance company after the screened-in portion, the roof collapsed, when we had that lovely snow in January. And we went through the process, and they cleaned it up. The structure of the deck is fine. It's just a matter of rebuilding the screened-in porch portion of it. But then when they went, through they've already given me the money months ago. Mm-hmm. But apparently, we did things wrong. But I didn't know we did things wrong. So can I show? You probably have everything here, but. My house is the second one down. This is an actual picture of my house. And the deck, the screen-in porch that was built on the back of it was made to complement the house, so it looked like it had always been there, and it was, a nice structure. Had the same roof as my roof and the guttering and stuff like that. Like I said, the earliest picture that I can find that I know I had it was May of 2006. I would like to rebuild the screened-in portion of the deck. The deck part, they say, is fine. The insurance company says it's stable and everything. I have 7 adult children who are married, and I have 24 grandchildren. And that's the reason that I built a deck in my, in the first place. And I don't know what other information that I should provide for you that would help you. You have the plat of the neighborhood?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you know, and you have the thing that shows where my house is?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
have that, and you have the neighbors around you?
Yes.
But I thought some of them might be here. Here. Is there anything else that you need that I should give you information on?
Board members?
And I guess just a couple questions when it's
Okay,
appropriate.
so we can ask our questions.
Okay. So I guess, as a board member, the challenge that we have in granting a variance is there's a couple of tests that this has to meet. And one of them is the applicant has to prove practical difficulty or unreasonable hardship. So I guess the question that I have is I understand you have a large family, and that's great. And I also understand that it sounds like you may have had a contractor who didn't understand the permitting process. You have a very large encroachment into your rear yard setback, and those setbacks are set for a reason. Can you explain, if you weren't able to rebuild to the size that you had or to what you had prior to the damage, what kind of practical difficulty or unreasonable hardship would that put on you? I mean, the house is still habitable. It just sounds like you're going to possibly lose some of the use of some of your outdoor space.
Well, the outdoor space, as far as the lot, is really not serviceable for me or my family. Because, I mean, it's a tiny lot, and that just was making it usable for us.
So the size of the
I mean,
current-
that from what I don't understand it. I didn't go out and measure off what it should have been.
Sure.
Because I didn't quite understand the wording and stuff like that. But my impression is that it would have been a very, very small, tiny deck. Did any of you have the opportunity to go? Oh, okay. All right. So, it would serve no purpose to me to have a little teeny tiny deck. What would be the purpose?
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is the size that you have currently, that is the minimum size that you find to be functional for that deck and enclosure?
For what, yes.
Okay.
Because they said, I mean, the deck itself is structurally sound. There is nothing wrong with it. I mean, because they were so backed up when they were trying to clean up after that huge storm. It took them a while to get there, and part of it had, the roof had collapsed and another part had cut. So they had more to replace as far as this stuff.
The railing?
Yes.
Okay.
And things like that. And they say structurally the deck is fine. It's just a matter of fixing the screened-in porch and the roof again. And then, of course, it hasn't been used all, so of course it needs to be cleaned up and stuff like that. But
Okay. That's all the questions I had.
Chris, anything?
Just going out there and I went out there the other day and,
Uh-huh.
and looked at it. I mean, it definitely appears that your property is unique in that, I mean, placing, like we said, placing a porch out there would be, basically impossible under the current, not only the town, but the community zoning laws. Is that correct?
like I said, I didn't go measure from, the sides in, so I don't know, but it just seemed like it would be not workable. And the placement of the the deck where it is, because I have a sliding glass door on the lower level, that's so that the sun can still get in, and that's the only that little place there, that's the only little place in the backyard you can play croquet. That little tiny piece of land there, but
If it please the board, is there a boundary survey that was done and submitted along with this? What is the
I understand the question, and we will get to you. I hate to interrupt, but I'll have your comments
Okay, I'm sorry.
after the questions from the board members. That's okay. There's a
I thought they
space
were
for
done- I thought
you.
they were done questioning.
No, I just wanted to check. Chris, anything else? Yes.
And has any neighbors ever expressed any displeasure with the, okay.
No.
You said you thought some neighbors were coming tonight to
Well,
actually
I didn't
show
ask
support?
them, it's none of my business to ask them, but I just assumed they got the little letters, right?
Ah.
Everybody in the whole court and the one little property that touches like this feet in the back, they all got the letters, right? So I assumed someone would come if they had a concern about it.
Okay.
Are they able to let their concerns be known to you if they don't come here, or can they
This is pretty
submit
much it.
something?
I think they could have replied in writing.
Correct, but I did not receive any concerns.
Okay. I think the fact, it's not like I'm building, I mean, I understand. The person I used obviously didn't, and I'm sorry about that. But nobody has ever complained like, oh, look at that monstrosity, because it looked like part of my house. You know, it was nice. It wasn't just a throw an ad on it. It looked like it was built with the house. Unfortunately, it's not there now.
Anything else, Chris?
I think I'm good.
I have a question. Who placed the porch on the back of the house? Who made that decision that this is where it needs to be?
I
You-
did.
Okay. No, I just wondered about
Because, oh, I'm sorry,
with the glass, with your sliding glass door.
is over
but
on
I
this
mean,
side.
Right.
And on the upstairs, the sliding glass was there, and I have a window at the kitchen. The whole thing wasn't enclosed on the screen-in porch. There's probably maybe 8 to 10 feet of it was open, because that's where I put my grill.
Okay.
You know, so the side, if you've been there, where the steps go down, that portion, probably 8 to 10 feet over, is open, because that's where the grill went, and the other part was enclosed with the screen
Okay.
portion.
Anything, Chris?
I would ask it of you, but I'm going to ask it of Michelle because she can kind of fill in and answer for you. Am I reading her setback from her house to the end of her property is 26 feet?
Yes,
Currently?
it is. Yes.
So essentially, to build a deck under the guidelines set up without a variance, she would have to have a 1-foot deck.
Exactly. I could
Okay.
authorize
Which-
up to, but not 50% of that setback myself, but this deck existing as is and wanting to maintain it it requires more than that.
Gotcha. That's all the questions I had.
Any other questions from
Got a
board members?
question, no, from Michelle.
Okay.
Michelle, do you happen to know, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, do you know what the biggest variance that has been granted for residential use in the town of Manchester to date?
I know we have done them probably of this size. It's not unique to some of these cluster subdivisions because the houses were put in these envelopes that don't allow you to do anything unless you get a variance. There are several in Hallie Hill, and we've even done several that go with like Castlefield because they're in a bigger envelope. So it's not uncommon.
So you think that we,
If I'm right, she doesn't really back to anybody.
No, it's just that
So in
storing
those
water.
circumstances, we normally don't have too many people that complain.
so you think that the town of Manchester's allowed up to a reduction down to 10 feet of rear yard?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then I would just have a question for John. John, is there any way that this could not be guised as a variance, but as an existing non-conforming use? Or do we have to do a variance?
No, we
That's a
did
good
look
question.
at that,
That's a good
but
question.
because it was built without a permit, there is a statute of limitations. So if you build something with a permit and a certain amount of time passes, we actually looked at that.
Okay.
Michelle called me, but unfortunately there was no valid permit to begin with, so you don't get the benefit of the grandfathering without the valid permit. So
So I'm struggling with, if the variance is not granted, there's an existing deck there today that's an encroachment. So if it's not granted, then does that mean that the applicant would have to remove the deck?
well, the deck alone is entitled to some.
I think 25%, which would be 6 feet over the rear yard, so it would be a 7-foot deck. And I think it's a 16-foot deck now.
Okay.
So it would have to be reduced by a substantial amount to conform. So I'm just trying to understand if the variance isn't granted, does that put a hardship on the applicant that the deck has to be removed? Or reduced to 7 feet off of the back of the house?
If you find that that's a hardship, yes.
Okay.
I didn't specifically look at, how the dimensions lay out, but
Sure, I understand.
the fact that it's an unenclosed deck puts it in a different category, so she's got some option there, but it sounds like you have looked at that and
Well,
what she got.
it appears to allow for a carported deck or a one-story open porch with or without a roof may extend into any required yard not more than 25% of the minimum required depth. So it sounds like even with the porch on it, I guess it was open based on the photos that I obtained. It was just screened in, correct? But it was an open air. It wasn't enclosed with walls when it was up,
No.
Oh, no.
right?
Oh, is that my house?
Yes.
It's all over Facebook for trying to find a picture.
Okay. So if the variance is denied, then the deck would have to be brought into conformance under the zoning code. And would have to be physically reduced.
Well, we have to,
Well, let me run something by you, okay? If we have two types of variances, each one requires that you put in an application, each one requires posting the property and notifying the neighbors. And I don't know, because I've never done this before, but if you don't go and you don't get the full variance, then at a minimum, would you still be able to get the less than 50% variance that we would have done anyway through the office, which would be, up to 12 feet?
by way of an administrative variance, is that?
Yes.
I didn't look at whether that was available, but that sounds reasonable. I guess the other way to look at it is that the deck unenclosed, I guess, well, it would have needed a permit because
Yes.
it was too much of an encroachment. So I guess it really doesn't, I'll stick with my original thought, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, but you have to get up to the microphone, please.
Sorry, I
No.
don't stand for long.
That's fine.
You can move the chair over if you
No,
wish.
that's okay. So when you're talking about reducing the size of the deck, basically that's going to, they told me it would have to be torn down. It's not like you can make it smaller because of the way it's structured.
Sure, understood.
So the deck,
And as of now, if they come out and fix it, they're not planning on ripping the whole thing down from
Oh,
scratch.
no.
They're keeping the current
Everything,
legs.
I don't know
and
when you came out.
Just the other day, yeah.
Okay, they're probably going to have to take some of the railings down because they got, when the second part of it fell down, because they weren't able to get to me for like 2 or more weeks afterwards because of all the other houses that they were taking care of because of the damage. So I'm sure they'll have to take some more of the railing down to replace, but the structure of the deck, they said, is fine.
Okay.
If I could, just
Yes,
for
please.
the record, Mrs. Jensen, could you describe for the record the lay of the land in the back of your house and what's behind it? We heard a little bit about it, but if you could describe that in some detail.
I thought this was the biggest problem, is right here.
Right, right.
I
The
mean,
fact that-
here,
Right, you're,
this person here is
Yeah,
the
you're
one
here.
that's the biggest problem. And
This is from when I purchased the house. This would be me, 145. So, can you hear?
okay,
So it's a court, the actual piece of property is like this. This is open, and I guess this is a runoff, water runoff thing. I think it's, I don't know whether it's still fenced in, but it used to be. This is Manchester's land, as far as I know. I have one neighbor who's not actually in the court. They've got a little tiny bit of property. So they were on the list to get information too. But, basically, there's nothing behind us.
Is that wooded?
No, it's like a runoff thingy.
a pond or.
So the
I mean,
topography,
it's
it drops
just-
down?
Yeah, normally
Kind of
there's no
like
water in it.
shrubs.
Huh?
It's kind of like shrubs.
overgrown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
weeds.
It's overgrown, but I think it's for runoff water to go into. I haven't seen a lot of water in it. But when we first moved in, it seemed like it had a lot of water in it. Is that a good enough
Yeah, does that run
description
off,
for
does
you?
that water run through your lot and into the pond, towards the pond? Is that an issue for you?
I've never seen any water run from us to that. I just thought it was part of the construction. There's one, when you first come into the neighborhood, there's the one that used to be fenced, now it has pine trees around it. It's like a deep
Yeah, it's
thing that I thought was
in
for
here.
runoff water too.
It is, they are storing it.
Is that a good enough description for you?
Sure.
It slopes. Your backyard slopes
Yes.
steeply. There's no flat. It's
Not really. That's why I say that the side, the little bit of side that has toward the sliding glass door, that's the only place that you can hang without it just falling over.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, at this time, I would like to call for any adjoining property owners who have received notification of the hearing and who were sworn in to come forward at this time, state their name, address for the record, and present their concerns. There are no other adjoining property members present. At this time, I'd like to call for any other interested persons who were sworn in and would like to make a statement in the case, to come forward one at a time, state their name and address for the record, and present their statement. Now, sir, if you'd like to,
Although,
ask questions
I don't
and you-
believe the gentleman's been sworn in.
Well,
That's the
he
only
has
issue.
not been
I
sworn
don't
in.
want to give testimony, can I do I have to be sworn in to ask questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Chris, would you swear him in, please?
Do you solemnly declare or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony which you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I'm Mike Stewart. I'm a Manchester resident. And I came here curious because these hearings are like Bigfoot. They don't have them. Just listening, is there a plat or there's a boundary survey in Evans? What's the distance from the back of her house to the edge of the property on the boundary survey? Do you have your boundary?
26 feet.
26 feet. Ma'am, did you place your house or did the builder place your house? Right, on the topography. You live in a court, right? So the builder places your house on this land, which is in a court, which is kind of, I guess, squished. So it's 26 feet, the setback's 25 feet. So basically you can have really no deck at all through no fault of your own of the property. Is that correct?
No, that's
Well,
not correct.
well, no, because the way they do cluster subdivisions, the actual setback can go to 10 feet now.
Okay, so she can have a 10-foot deck, which a 10-foot deck is, it's a 10-foot deck. Okay. So, but would you argue that the property, I guess, is unique in the fact that it's in a court and the way it does it? So if the uniqueness of the property would trigger the analysis, I guess, now, not just hardship, but practical difficulty not brought on by the homeowners themselves, by the lot and the placement. Is that fair to say, guys?
Well, I guess I'm confused as to the line of questioning and what your interest is
Well, I'm
in
just
the
listening. I'm just
application.
interested because I heard you say that it's hardship, but isn't the first pole in the tent the uniqueness of the property? If you don't get uniqueness, you don't go into practical difficulty and hardship.
But the challenge for us as a board is that this is an out-of-sequence request.
I understand.
Typically, it would be the contractor or the homeowner coming to the board first to ask for the variance,
Right.
and it would be considered before construction starts.
I got you.
And in most jurisdictions in Maryland, because I do business in a lot of the jurisdictions, they frown heavily upon,
Right,
oops, it was
but
built.
procedure's procedure, but the ability under the code to grant a variance, you can. If you let that water flow under the bridge, should I say. So there's nobody here from adjoining neighbors who cared to come. It's been there. Apparently, you got in testimony that there's no problem with water, easement, drainage, other things. And basically, because of her lot, if she came to you fresh, would you have granted it? Now, this is a unique piece of property, no fault of her own. She didn't place the house. You basically got an unusable 10-foot deck. So I'm suggesting, from what I hear, and from the property's uniqueness and practical difficulties, or hardship, whatever you want to call it, the case law uses both, that, if you look at it, you have the power under the code to grant the variance. if it doesn't interfere with utility easements, drainage easements, others, and you're not really setting a bad precedent anyway. I mean, she didn't know that they didn't pull permits, you know, obviously. So, like I'm saying is, she couldn't grant it administratively, but you've got the power under the case law, you've got the power under the land use article, and under the code, which flows from it, to do that if the record has enough on evidence. And the fact of the matter is, I think her property is unique because it's a court, the way it was placed on. If you told somebody that I can only have a 10-foot deck when you moved in, they'd probably tear their hair out. So, I mean, if you're struggling with that, I'm just saying, and council might have a different opinion, but if you're struggling with that, I mean, you have the power to grant this variance if you want to. I mean, don't let the fact that just because they didn't pull a permit, that, you know, that's not where the analysis stops or flows from. You know, the other fact is that when a property owner puts themselves in the condition themselves, does something to do this, which she hasn't really done. I mean, she thought she was doing the right thing. You've had this use she's had out there, and whether it's screened in or not screened in really doesn't change the character of the setback violation. You know, whether it goes up into, you know, uncontrolled airspace doesn't change the setback. So from what I've heard here, I would suggest, as an interested, you know, if you have the power, I suggest you should grant it. And I think there's enough in the record now for you to do it.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask the applicant for their final statement on the case.
Thank you. I hope that you will be able to grant the variance so that I can make my house whole again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we close the record, just a question for Michelle. Do we have a certificate that the property was posted for the requisite amount of time? Is that part of the record yet?
I have the ads from the paper,
Okay.
from when the ad went in the paper. Oh,
Oh,
and
the
then I
ads, how
put
about the posting? Do we have some
The posting is
certification?
still in our yard right now, sorry.
Okay, so you have personal knowledge that it
Yes,
was
yes, that I
posted
posted it
and
properly.
continues to
And
be
I saw
posted
it
now?
tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I know that, but I saw it myself as well.
Oh,
But
sorry, yeah.
I don't know
wanted to
that
get
the
it in the
record
record, right.
reflected that, and that's important.
Yes.
Okay, good, we got it.
I
Thank you.
have a question for you. When we're saying exactly what this variance is, and of course, I advertised it as 10 feet, is the variance actually from the end of the deck or from the footer? I'm just curious, because sometimes there's an overhang that's immensely, it can be up to 3 feet. So where am I really supposed to measure from? I'm just wondering.
There is some language, I couldn't quote it to you off the
Okay.
top of my head, but there is some language about overhang that is permitted within the setback. We'd have to look at what the, what the standard is, but that can be allowed.
Okay. I'll
We can get together and look at what that is, but there is some language about that.
At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing and record for the case.